Hey everyone, I'm Melissa and I'm at Dragon Man's. If you don't know about us yet, we are a multi-recreational facility consisting of a military museum, one of the largest in the country, firearm store, shooting ranges, a motorcycle rebuilding shop, paintball courses, and motocross tracks. So come on down, check us out. We're 8 miles east of Colorado Springs in Colorado, and I manage this place along with my dad. My parents started this about 43 years ago in 1982. They moved out here from New York. My mom was from Long Island. She grew up in Wantagh specifically, and my dad in Brooklyn. And then they moved out here together, and they started selling firearms in '91. Opened up the gun store, and it actually started out as the motorcycle rebuilding shop, and then they kind of just branched off from there. My mom passed away in 2012, and we miss her every day. For that reason, though, even though I graduated from college, have a degree, all of that stuff, I came back to help my dad run Dragon Man's. My parents spent a lot of time building up this place, and I'm not about to see it go anywhere but up and succeed. So, with that being said, a lot of the things that we do here kind of revolves around firearms, and laws really impact our place. So I have been doing political videos kind of in the past, just talking about gun laws and how things are going in Colorado. I have not made one in a kind of a while because I've been extremely busy. If you guys watch our page, we've been starting to promote the Front Range Freedom Shoot that I organize along with a couple of other people who help me, but it's not a big team at all. It's a lot of work, and just getting companies involved and vendors and just setting it all up and organizing it is a lot of work. And then I do other stuff, like we're putting on a little seminar this weekend talking about real laws, real cases, self-defense in your state, just trying to equip people with the right information to conceal carry and have a firearm in their home with confidence, knowing all their legalities if they were to use their firearm in self-defense. If you're interested in that, I'll put the link in this video and you can sign up. I am going to talk about the big, beautiful bill with the HPA and the Short Act and try to make it as simple and easy for you guys to understand. And then I'm going to go over into the laws that passed this year in Colorado's legislative session. There's a total of 10 gun bills that passed out of 16. I'm only going to probably talk about 7 of them, the ones that directly affect you, and what the next couple of months or in the next year and a half will look like here in Colorado, and potential hope for restoring neutrality in our state politically. All right, so let's get into it. Apologies up front for making this a longer video, but I have a lot to cover, and probably won't be making a video update like this in a while, just because the planning of our Front Range Freedom Shoot will kind of take up a lot of my time, and I teach classes, so come and see me if you're looking for your concealed carry permit. All right, so the big beautiful bill, essentially in a very simplified way, you guys probably already seen videos about this, but it's a whole budget bill, pages and pages long. And actually, if you get to the suppressor portion of the bill, it's like a paragraph. But essentially, the original bill, the Hearing Protection Act, was going to deregulate suppressors from being an NFA regulated item, which was the National Firearms Act that imposed a $200 fee and all these permit requirements to own a dangerous firearm like a suppressor during the Prohibition era in 1934, and trying to de-incentivize criminals from purchasing these firearms that were commonly used by criminals. Now, 91 years later, we are still paying this $200 fee, even though we're not criminals, even though we are well past the prohibition time. So why are we still paying this? And actually in other countries, especially like in Europe, they just sell accessories like a suppressor. So they kind of have it backwards. And places like France and Sweden and Finland, they don't even require permitting or anything like that. The HPA Act initially really did not make it that far, because it essentially wanted to take off the fee, but it wanted to keep on the permitting. And the gun owner Republicans in Congress were like, no, we're not going to allow that. So then they argued and debated and got a portion of the HPA into the big beautiful bill, the first 2 amendments. They did not take any of the verbiage from the Short Act, which would have essentially taken short-barreled rifles off of that NFA list. So we would like to see that added, but in a very simplified way. There are 20 states that still need some sort of verbiage to really have any sort of legal grounds to say that we're meeting state statutes. Places like Colorado and all of the other restrictive states, for the most part, Washington, I believe Texas actually had a state statute, but last weekend they took it off so that now there won't be this conflict on a state level. And they actually just made short-barreled rifles legal to own in the state of Texas on a state level. So pretty cool. Colorado, however, we have some senators that really won't care to fight for that. And in order to make this a little bit more fair on a legal standpoint, we would need the Third Amendment basically saying a person acquiring or possessing a firearm silencer in accordance with Chapter 44 of Title 18 U.S. Code shall be treated as meeting any registration and licensing requirement of the NFA Act with respect to such silencer. So what that means is that if we were to do, say, a 4473, that we are now showing that we are meeting those federal requirements and compliance, but without any sort of permit or permission process, then we don't really have any grounds to say that we are now in federal compliance. So here in Colorado, we have a state statute 1812-102 that makes silencers a dangerous weapon unless we get our tax stamp and we pay a $200 fee, and now it's not so scary anymore. Because the national level wouldn't, have that requirement anymore to get a tax stamp, we can't really satisfy state requirements. And I know many people will say, well, if it doesn't exist, then you technically satisfy it. But unfortunately, from a lot of legal perspectives, it's not how it works. And a lot of states like Texas basically got rid of that so that there wouldn't be any problems like that. So essentially, the state has to go back and codify those measures, take them out so that now everything is reciprocal on a national level and a state level. If we could put back the Amendment 3, then we could potentially have legal grounds now to argue that a 4473 satisfies those requirements. I understand that you guys want suppressors like accessories. I do too. Highly support that. However, if Colorado and other states don't take out those requirements, then we need this amendment to say that that would legally meet all of those requirements. And then the last thing that people are really wanting is the preemption laws, essentially stating that the federal level supersedes the state laws. So if there was a type of preemption in there in the suppressor portion of the big beautiful bill plus the Amendment 3, if those were added and it got passed, that would be like an actual big and beautiful bill. I don't really know how things are going to go, and I think they're going to vote on this in the Senate July 4th. So some people are not purchasing suppressors or, SBRs. Will they add in terminology from the Short Act saying now, SBRs are taken off of that? I think that might be a little far-fetched, but this would be the year to do it because Republicans do hold majority in the branches, and then we know that Trump would sign off on it. So this is history in the making, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But for those of you who are waiting to see what happens, it's up to you. We do offer a lot of tax stamps that are free promos here at Dragon Man. So also, if it's passed as is, the scariest part is that it would basically ban suppressors in states like Colorado. So states that have these requirements, these statutes, and those aren't met, and the state doesn't change that, are essentially illegal to purchase because you won't have that permit or registration to fulfill those statute requirements. All right, so now moving on to what's happening in Colorado on a state level. If you're watching from another state, unfortunately, I don't really go into many national laws. The HPA and the BBB are one of the few ones that I've talked about. But check out the Washington gun law page, Mr. Guns and Gear, Colin Noir, the Guns and Gadgets people. They go over a ton of stuff happening on a national level, especially what just happened like this morning with Snoopy versus Ocean State Tactical in Maryland. So, and how it wasn't heard by SCOTUS, but tons of stuff going on a national level. So I totally get it. But unfortunately, here in Colorado, it's not the same state that I grew up in. There's been an onslaught of gun legislation since 2013 and a whole shift in politics in recent years that really, the representatives pushing these bills, I feel, truthfully, don't represent a majority of Coloradoans, and their constituents are not in favor of a lot of these bills. And interestingly enough, crime has risen. Since 2018, it has really skyrocketed since then. And with the more gun legislation passed, I don't feel like it's really making the impact that these legislators wanted it to do. So unfortunately, it just hurts the law-abiding gun owner, and it really tries to just strip us of our firearms, of our Second Amendment right, and it doesn't really go after the criminal. There is one bill that got passed that went after criminality, but other than that, it's going after people who have not done anything wrong. All right, so talking about the worst bill that was passed, SB 3, the law that's going to require you to get your Polis permission slip, go to the sheriff's department in your county to now do a background check, submit an application that will actually go to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife to now create like this registry, backdoor registry of what type of people and who is applying for their application, their permit to take a class to buy one of the scary guns behind me. So you'll do that once you get approved, and it's a shall issue by the sheriff's department, even though luckily most sheriff's departments are not in favor of this bill whatsoever. So that's good. I'm pretty sure they will happily, grant you the permission to go and take a class because they were highly against this bill. And then you can take the long class, 12 hours, or the short class with your hunter cert, and then a 4-hour class or the long 12-hour class if you don't take the hunter education course. Now, let's say you have a hunter education cert from 10 years ago. It will not satisfy the requirements. I believe it has to be within 5 years of purchasing the firearm. Now, once you've taken that class, you'll be on this electronic database letting firearm dealers know that you can now purchase this and so forth. So that's what's going on with SB 3. That will go into effect August of 2026. So, you have about a year and a half to purchase a lot of these firearms. At the Front Range Freedom Shoot that we're hosting September 13th and 14th, you'll get a chance to demo a ton of stuff, suppressors, optics, firearms. So it's a great time to come out, get what you want to get before this goes into effect. And we'll probably be doing some promos on the excise tax that got passed. So we will still have to pay it, but we're going to try to make life a little bit easier for you that weekend financially. Yes, it will be applied to SBRs, SB 3. So now if you think about it, you got to jump through all the hoops to just buy the SBR, and then you have to get your tax stamp for it, pay an additional fee. So really owning firearms in the future is truly going to be for the elitists, for the wealthy. All right, the next one, SB 25-034, the voluntary do not sell firearms waiver. This is just an odd one. It's really geared towards people who are feeling suicidal to put themselves on a list to now deny them of a firearm purchase if they are feeling like they are going to act upon their thoughts, and also have a contact person that will be contacted if they presumably attempt to purchase a firearm. And then also if they want to take themselves off the list, they have to contact that person, the regulating agency, and then that regulating agency then also gives their information to CBI to deny them of the purchase. I find this to just be a really weird bill because, will this be public knowledge somehow down the road if someone kind of hacks in, gets this information out? And then also, if someone who does feel suicidal lives in a home where there's firearms or has friends who have firearms, or goes to a firearm shooting range and rents a firearm, I think that they would still be able to carry out some sort of action if they truly wanted to. And I think this just creates more bureaucracy around, sharing personal information. And I don't know. I'm just not really for that bill. This one is currently still waiting the governor's signature. So the governor has 30 days to sign after the session ends. So just a couple more days. All right, what's next? The penalty for theft of a firearm. This was a good one. So previously, if a firearm had a value of under $2,000, it was a misdemeanor charge. Now, and it's in effect right now, it went into effect immediately. If you steal, you break in, there's theft of a firearm for any value, regardless of how cheap that firearm is. Now it will be a Class 6 felony. So, the Class 1 will obviously be worse. That obviously shows up on your record. It carries into someone's ability to potentially apply for a job, pass a background check, all that type of stuff. So it is now more severe, which is good. Um, the next one is going to be the requirements for sale of firearms ammunition. That will also affect reloading components, so primers, powders, stuff like that. This will go into effect July 1st of 2026. So we have about a year before this goes in, and um, this will essentially make it illegal for someone under 21 to purchase ammo unless they are active military, or they have a hunter certificate or a hunting license, or they are taking a class where they can purchase, or they are purchasing rimfire ammunition. So those are the exceptions. A couple of things required for this bill will now be that ammo has to be kept out of the customer's reach. It has to be either locked up or out of their reach. And then also this will apply at gun shows too. So now gun show vendors won't be allowed to just have ammo on their table, and you have to get it for the customer. The packaging on it can't really show that there's ammunition inside. The labeling, when it gets delivered, someone 21 years or older has to sign for it. And I believe that's about it. So still a direct infringement on our rights, especially because on a national level, they found by the, I believe it was the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, that it is against the Constitution to deny the purchase of a firearm to someone who is, under 21. So they found that people who are 18 and over, by law, should still be able to purchase that, and that should be covered under the Second Amendment. Obviously, that didn't hold weight and carry over to Colorado because this is what's going on. So I think there was a precedent set if any sort of organization or someone wanted to bring this lawsuit forward again, and I hope that it does because that precedent was set. So, all right, the next one's going to be HB 25-1250, Gun Violence Prevention in Parents of Students. This is essentially a law that will be implemented in schools, creating materials to give out to parents at the beginning of the years to educate them on dangers and risks involved with a firearm in the home. Now, I personally do think that parents hold a certain responsibility for how they are going to educate their children on firearms, how they're going to lock them up. I educate people on this all the time in my classes. However, I personally think that these materials will be propaganda to really just reinforce the negative perception, the negative stigma that firearms have, gotten throughout social media and on, news and so forth, and just the generalized attitude that a lot of people have towards firearms, and it doesn't really put them in a positive light. I really like to educate people on safe firearm ownership, and really, instead of these materials kind of showing what safe looks like, or how to talk to your children about firearms. But what I think this will do, especially because I don't really know who's in charge of creating these material booklets, is really kind of show like the dangers, all the bad things that could happen with firearms, and really just again reinforces the negative stigma that firearms generally get. So for that reason, I am against this law. It is currently awaiting the governor's signature, so it actually hasn't, passed yet technically, but if he doesn't sign it within a couple of days, then yes, it will naturally go into law. All right, so now we're going to move on to the gun show requirements, HB 25-1238. This was signed by the governor April 18th, and it will go into effect January 1st of 2026. A lot of stuff going on in this bill. Essentially is going to refer to the promoter as the organization or company or person putting on the gun show, and then the vendor refers to the the booth, the company inside, renting a table in the gun show. So a couple of things the promoter has to do is create the security plan, put security cameras in place, submit that over to their local sheriff's department. And I don't know if they have to get approval on it, but they do have to submit that in addition to showing the security for the parking lot. And then also having security guards and so forth, which I believe they already do. There's a lot of requirements in there for, background checks and any firearm that were to leave the gun show, showing that they met all of the the 3-day wait period requirements and the 4473 requirements. Not only that, but the promoter that will then require each vendor to submit to them a document saying that they're going to abide by all the Colorado laws and that they're not going to sell any magazines over 15 rounds. You got to initial it and then sign on the bottom and then give it to the promoter a couple weeks or at least 3 days before the gun show. So, this will be really interesting to see how gun shows now will go here in Colorado. In addition to that, anyone under 18 was 21. They now modified that to 18. So no one under 18 is allowed in a gun show without a parent or legal guardian. ATF will not be regulating the magazines. It's a state level law. So it will now come down to the new firearm dealer division to regulate these gun shows, and I am sure that they will. That law goes into effect July 1st, where now every FFL has to be in compliance with state laws with the firearm dealer permit division, and all of us have been educating ourselves on that and becoming compliant and getting our license for the past couple of months. Still need to get the fingerprinting because that was a whole mess. Codes, if you're a federal firearms license, watching this, you understand that it just wasn't really organized very well, especially with the fingerprinting, but that's what's going on in Colorado. So you can't operate as a firearm store if you don't have now your state license. And then that department will be really regulating firearm stores too, in addition to ATF on a federal level, and then also regulating the gun shows. Next is going to be HB 25-1225, Intimidation in Election Rules. So there's actually already a law, I believe, in Colorado that regulates some sort of intimidation during an election, but this is like a supplement to it. Why they needed a supplement, I'll look more into that. You could again go down a rabbit hole of reading through all of these bills, and then you find another bill that's related to it. But so this was like a supplement, essentially saying that you can't intimidate anyone with a firearm in any sort of like election related activity, especially like polling places or places where they count ballots and so forth. There were scenarios where people were outside, I guess, ballot counting buildings where, they were being really aggressive and so forth. So this bill is interesting, and why I'm really in opposition for it is in the bill language, it actually says that you don't have to prove that there was intent to intimidate. You only have to prove that there was an attempt to intimidate. And that is very arbitrary language, and how a lawyer, the DA, or a judge will interpret that situation and say that, oh yeah, clear attempt, then it will really works in favor of the person suing. So that one is awaiting governor signature, and it would go into effect January 1st of 2026. All right, almost done here. The last one, SB 25-158, State Agency Procurement and Disposal of Weapons. This one was an interesting one as well because on the one hand, I was really happy to know that they are not now requiring firearms to be destroyed that are left at police regulating agencies like sheriff's departments, because a lot of historical firearms kind of find their way there, and I would hate to see those destroyed. But now they're saying that they will contract it out to like an organization or even a federal firearms licensee to now take these firearms and essentially, you can make them better. If you guys have ever heard of that program where they take old 1911s, M1 carbines, M1 Grands, and you get on a waiting list, and then when they get to you, then they will, I think you still have to pay for them, but they'll send it to a federal firearms licensee, and now you can have a piece of history. But in order to get approved for that contract, you have to submit a lot of personal information about your company. Too much of an infringement. So and I think Sullivan and Gonzalez, Froelich, and Brown, they were the sponsors of this bill. They were almost the same sponsors besides Brown that put SB3 on the table. A little bit interesting there. With that in mind, that is it for the bills. But just to kind of give you a heads up on some of these people who were prime sponsors on all the bills that I just discussed, I'm just going to tell them out loud. So Kipp, Sirota, Lindstedt, Brown, Froelich, Gonzalez, Sullivan, Hendrickson, Velasco, Woodrow, Kipp, Camacho, Joseph, Cutter, Hamrick, Representative Duran, Representative Bosnecker, and I believe I said everyone else's name. Some people are on here 2 or 3 times. They are sponsoring a lot of anti-gun bills. So really interesting stuff. We have one more session of this, and then we get to have a general election in 2026. So to give you a little bit of hope on that, I did some digging, and I found that while El Paso County that I live in, we're a red county, we had a voter turnout of about 51%. Not great. But then I also did some research on Denver, and Denver was at 53% turnout. Now, Denver really has a huge impact on the state. But imagine if we had counties like El Paso have even better voter turnout. What will happen then? Let's say Denver kind of remains the same, but we can get El Paso County and other surrounding counties, especially in the rural counties, up a lot higher. Then we might begin to see some things change. In the Senate, we really only need to flip about 3 seats to really gain neutrality back in the Senate. So not completely hopeless here in Colorado. I think that as long as people stay educated, they stay informed, they get out to the polls, come November, then it'll be interesting to see what happens then. That is it for the video. Again, really long, I know, but this is like one of the last videos that I'll be making for a while. We'll see what happens on the federal level with the big beautiful bill and the HPA and the Short Act, but so many other things going on. I am organizing our Front Range Freedom Shoot, so if you want to come out, you want to celebrate your Second Amendment, we will have a lot of stuff going on that I will be informing you guys about with my dad. We're gonna make a video just giving you all the information, and then I'll be promoting all of the vendors attending and all the companies coming in all around the countries. And I hope you guys can attend. The tickets are live. I will put that link in this post as well. Come and visit us at Dragon Man's. We would love to see you. The museum is open Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday at 10 a.m. We'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.